Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. I'm joined by Mr. Jimmy Hunt. Um, you're in, where are you? I didn't even know where you are.
Tauranga.
You're in Tauranga because you spend half your life in Mexico.
Well, I spend 90% of my life in Mexico,
Oh, more than
but
half.
but only when global pandemics fuck everything up do I have to come back to New Zealand for a little longer to be able to do some work.
Brutal. That must be tough because your wife is in Mexico right now, huh?
Correct. So this is the longest by a long shot that we've spent apart, and I'm going home in a couple of weeks, but it will be 6.5 months in total.
Oh, wow. That's tough. Before we get
Yep.
into the pain of separation, for those who aren't familiar with your work, what do you do, Jimmy?
Hi, my name is Jimmy Hunt, and I don't know. I'm kind of just me. That's what I like. I kind of just do me. And I tried to be many things in my life, and many of those things didn't work. I wasn't great at them. And then I just decided that my job was going to be me. And then the more I became me, the more I would share what I learned about becoming me, and then maybe that would help other people become them.
Oh.
And so basically, my job is to move myself up what I term the mental fitness continuum. The further I get up there, the more I learn and the more I am able to help other people move themselves up the mental fitness continuum. So other people would say, I work in fucking mental health.
But you're not other people, you're you.
That's
Uh,
why mine's a lot longer and more rambling.
no, that's cool. Well, what drives you to do that? Because that's your life's work, it would appear. You've been doing this for a
Yeah.
long time. Before being a mental health influencer was something people aspired to be, you were doing this
Oh,
pretty organically. So
yeah. I mean, and that's
how did
that's
this
the
start?
thing. Like back when back when I was started to talk about mental health, it was the opposite. You were actually detrimentally affected by talking about it. You were more likely to be fired or ostracized or not talked to. And I think that's something that I really like to bring up and make sure people understand is the distance we have come as a society in the last 10 years is phenomenal. We have come so far in regards to mental health. It was something that we couldn't talk about. Now it's something that is in some instances, in some cases, and in some studies, it is actually talked about too much. So we've come a long, long, long way, and basically mine came from poor mental health. I was depressed, I was anxious, I was suicidal, and you end up with two choices: either get the fuck out of here, which I decided to do a couple of times but never went through with it, or fix yourself, because staying down in that really severe discomfort for an extended period of time is not tenable. You can't live there for long. And so, when I decided that, well, fuck it, I need to start getting better, then each time I got better, it's kind of like I use a lot of physical fitness metaphors in the way I speak, but it's kind of like going to CrossFit for the first time, and all of these people are like, "Oh my god, I've learned all this stuff. I'm doing all, and now I'm going to tell every motherfucker on the planet about this, right?" And so in a similar way, every time I learned something that helped me, I was like, I need to tell people about this. This is amazing. And so that's all I did. And if there's anything, that was my the cover of my webcam. just
I
just
was like,
just
what's
decided to
going
move
on
on
here?
down. Basically, what was I saying? I was saying that every time I learned something, I wanted to tell people about it. And that just became a habit. And then what I found out is the one thing that I happen to be reasonably good at is taking very complex subjects and dumbing them down for the normal people like me, and then explaining them in a way that creates action out the other end. Because there are a lot of really, really, really smart people out there coming up with really brilliant ways in order to be mentally fitter. And if you read their paper on it, you're like, what the actual hell are you talking about? How does this work in the real world? And I happen to be able to take some of that stuff and explain it in a way that we're like, oh, this is what it really means. This is how we can actually apply it. And here's how we can create actual change in our life over time to make us happier.
And you've written a couple of books talking about these findings too, right?
3 books now.
3 books.
I think I now can officially call myself an author. I think 3 books deep, I'm allowed to be an author. Because I didn't feel like I was an author for the first 2. I thought I was just writing some stories about my life.
No, they're not just stories. You do a really good job of intertwining what you've learned and what like you're talking about and how they can help other people into your story, which makes it relatable, I'd say.
Well, that's exactly it. You know, my background is branding and design, and one of the tenets of being able to sell is story sells. That's it. Story sells. People don't care so much about the numbers, the benefits and things like that. They want it all wrapped up in a story. And then off the other side of that is, how do you change a culture? Well, you change a culture through story. We've done that for millennia, and we continue to do it in this day and age. And so you think about something like the AIDS crisis. So AIDS was something that, you know, we didn't really know much about. It was killing a lot of people. And then we found out that it actually wasn't as contagious as we thought. That basically, we had people who were really sick, and you could get it if you ended up sleeping with them or things like that. But what it took was someone like Princess Diana to go into hospitals and hold their hands and hug them, and then tell that story to an audience. And then these, you know, people with big followings started doing concerts about it and saying, look, this is the way AIDS actually is. It's not the way that, you know, that we're thinking about it in such a detrimental fashion. Yeah, it's bad, but here's the truth of it. And we told stories and stories and stories. We told stories about smoking and how it's not cool anymore. And now the smoking rates are way down. And so story is how we change culture, and it's how we have changed a culture around mental health. John Kerwin told a story, and he changed a nation. Before John Kerwin came out, like 17 years ago or something, before he came out and said it, every man in the country, what the fuck's depression? No, fuck off. You know, he told a story, and other people are like, oh, well, it's just John Kerwin, a World Cup winning All Black, telling us about his life, and he doesn't feel well? Oh, okay. But if some scientist had got up and said, look, depression's a really big problem, here are the facts, here are the figures, the majority of New Zealand men would not have given a fuck.
I totally agree. Yeah, I think John Kerwin and Mike King really paved the way in this country for opening up that conversation around mental health. And also within that, like, there is like a reframing of masculinity, right? Like, we're always being staunch and tough as men, and we've got to keep this mask on of socially approved behavior and expression. And they both really took that mask off and let us see what was behind it, which is a whole lot of hurt and pain and confusion and mental illness. And
and we've come a long way in the last 10 years with masculinity as well.
Yeah,
but we still have a lot further to go.
We do have a lot further to go. And this is where I find it's an interesting point to go back to that you mentioned, that so many people are talking about these things, which is great, but that means that there's so much confusion about the transmission of knowledge and information. And I do worry that sometimes there's not just an overcrowding in the space, not an overcrowding of the space, that's the wrong framing of it, but there's so much to cut through, there's so much noise to cut through. It's like, how do you discern?
And a lot of it's wrong.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say politely. How do you discern between good evidence-based? Yeah, you tell me. How do you discern between good information that has got a great story, but that is also wrapping up evidence-based, like academically well established approaches, or traditionally thousands of years, millennial, like millennials. Fuck, I can't even speak English. There's so much like in tradition that works too, that we kind of forget about sometimes because we're always looking for the next best thing. And then how do you just someone's opinion or someone's viewpoint or something, like
Yeah. So I mean, there's a big trend on TikTok at the moment of professionals breaking down misinformation. It started with COVID, but it's transitioned to mental health and psychology and all sorts of things. And so you've got all of these influencers saying these things, and then you've got actual experts in the topic going, actually, no. Actually, that's not how it works. No, that's not true. That's kind of true, but the way you've said it is actually wrong. It's true, but it actually means this. And so, yeah, like we're full of all of these things. But one of the biggest problems I've found in this space, and something that I have actually been really conscious about from the start, is not saying that I ever have an answer. I do not have an answer for you. What I do have is some experiences with some things and some understandings and some modalities. I have some experiences with those that have positively impacted my mental fitness. But one of the things that I've learned over 10 years of doing this is that no prescription is the same to get someone from bad to good. It doesn't, so for example, like when we talk about like a mental fitness pie, and we've got slices of all the different things in the pie, how much does physical fitness / Muay Thai make up in your pie, Richie?
I'd probably say at least 50%.
Big fucking chunk, right?
Yeah, at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah. And you're like, Muay Thai saved my life. Muay Thai changes my life. Muay Thai keeps me in this space, allows me to be able to be a good human and do these things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it makes up 0.0000%.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. There
Right?
are many tools for the same outcomes.
Yeah. But the problem is and this is obviously a very blatantly incorrect example that I'm giving here, which is, when someone stands up and said, Muay Thai is the answer. It's the thing that changes lives. It's the thing that makes you fit. And it's the thing that makes you mentally fit. It's all of these things. It's everything. And we're like, actually, it's not. It's everything for you.
Yeah, man. I really appreciate that because unfortunately, there's so much noise that is really didactic about you have to do this and this is the right way to be, whether it's about mental health or whether it's about a political conversation.
Yep.
And that's just not helpful.
Yeah,
Like,
I
it
tell you,
actually
the
does
only
more
thing
harm
that
than
people
good.
need to do, the only thing that people need to know, and the only thing that I'm probably right at, is getting people to understand that you have to opt in to your own healing and growth. That's it.
Which is hard for a lot of people to hear these days.
That's the biggest fucking problem. that your trauma is probably not your fault, but your healing is your responsibility. Oh no.
Yeah.
No, but this happened to me. These things, this person did this thing to me. It's horrible. I can't believe it. Yeah, well, bad luck. It's happened. It probably wasn't your fault, but literally the only thing from this exact moment on is your conscious choices. And you can choose in different directions, but you should be choosing in constructive ones. And so opting in, going, okay, right, from this point onwards, I need to be making better choices. What do better choices look like for me today? Well, I'll tell you what they look like. They look like me going to Richie's class. I'm gonna get off. I'm gonna go to Muay Thai. He raves about it so much, about how much it does for him. I'm gonna go to do that. And there's going to be one of probably three options. One, you go, it changes your fucking life. You meet people that are amazing. It gives you a modality that you're going to use forever to make you mentally fitter. Two, you never go back ever again. Three, you're like, That's actually okay. I'm going to go occasionally. That's going to make up a little bit of my pie. But you do not know what makes up those slices until you go and opt into them and try them and figure out what part that plays. Yoga, best thing you could ever fucking do. Won't do
You won't do it.
it. I've tried so many fucking times.
I'm the same
But
with meditation, and my partner's a meditation teacher. Like I
yeah, of
do,
course.
I muck about with that, but I
Yeah,
just haven't built it into my practices, and I really should because I
yeah,
know that it's beneficial for me, and I
yeah,
do feel good the odd time that I do it, but I
yeah.
find it really hard to like build it into my routine.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
meditation is the number one tool that I recommend. And the cool thing is, like, this is not, I mean, 20 years ago, if you're like, meditation will change your life, people like that Eastern weird shit. But now, in the last 20, 30 years, we've seen just so much Western medical research done on it that just shows how fundamentally amazing it is at regrowing the grey matter in our brains, rewiring our neural pathways. But the most important thing, and this is why I think it's the number one thing, the most important tool of meditation or the practice of meditation is the practice of being able to be the observer of your thoughts. If you can be the observer of your thoughts instead of being your thoughts, you're ahead of 99% of people right there. Done.
that's really deep. When I was doing some work with an anti-family violence charity, Shine, I would help co-facilitate men who'd been violent offenders, and part of the program that they were doing was around mindfulness. It was kind of like a CBT model in which would help men observe their natural responses to a situation, and then with that awareness shift their traditional behavior or their program behavior to something that was nonviolent and healthier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the I was writing in my I was doing automatic writing in my journal the other day, and I wrote something that came out from the ether, which was the distance between your thoughts and your actions is wisdom.
Mm,
And so basically, with those guys you're talking to, the distance between the thought and the action is milliseconds. Like, I think angry, I act angry. Both done. And if you can teach them to create a greater distance between their thoughts and then their action or reaction to that thought, then that's wisdom. That is the ability to see, oh shit, that's just a temporary feeling. Oh, actually, that is a feeling that shouldn't have come up with perspective. I read that wrong. I understood that wrong. Even if I did read it right, it's not the best action to respond this way. But it's the ability to create that distance between the thought and the action is where your change lies, your growth lies, and your wisdom lies.
yeah, that's the same with like substance abuse recovery as well. Like you have something that triggers you or some sort of impetus to pick up again or drink again, and then boom, you're back on. You're back off the wagon. Whereas if you have that space that you're talking about, then you will potentially make a better decision than going back to your old behaviors. Going back a second, why do you think it is so hard and even so controversial for people to buy into their own recovery or changing their own situation?
Well, the simplest answer to that is because as a general populace, we are unaware. We are not self-aware beings. We're very bad at self-awareness. Tashi Urich, who's the Harvard researcher at the forefront of a lot of this, after the biggest study ever done in 2015 on self-awareness, 96%, she declared 96% of people to be unaware.
Really?
Yep.
96% of people.
Yep. 96%. And that is we don't really understand our own thoughts. We don't understand how we fit into the world objectively. We don't understand how other people see us objectively. We're very unaware. And like my first piece of self-awareness came when I used to own a branding and design company downtown Auckland. I went out on my front step. There is 100 lunch options within 500 meters. 15 minutes later, I'm still standing on that step and I'm bawling my eyes out because I can't figure out what I want to have for lunch. And so I go back upstairs, sit at my desk, and I can continue to cry my eyes out. But this time, because I'm officially batshit insane. I am officially insane if I'm bawling my eyes out because I can't figure out what I want to have for lunch. And that was the first time I realized that I had a problem. And if you had asked my wife or my parents or anything in the years preceding that, they would be like, oh no, he had a fucking problem long before that day. Like, but it took that long and that particular little incident for me to go, oh, I actually have a problem. And then, one, it can take a long time to figure out that you are actually the problem and you have the problem. And then two, can take just as long to get to a point to take radical ownership of your situation to actually do something about it. Because we're very good at blaming everybody else and everything else and basically moving ourselves into a victim mentality. I had a great victim mentality. I literally, my depression and my horribleness was, it was my wife's fault. It was my upbringing's fault. It was the universe's fault. It was society. It was fucking anybody's fault but mine. And when you're in that state, it's very, 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 very hard to create any change.
I feel like there's a political narrative that rewards people for victimhood online, at least. Like
Oh
you
yeah,
you get a lot of social validation for talking about your wounding or what's wrong with the system and how that impacts on you. And those things are true often. There are structural causes for inequality and different outcomes, and society's not particularly equitable. But at the same time, I would argue that in spite of that, we do have agency within those frameworks. And if we can take ownership of ourselves, we're then better able to change those, injustices.
yeah. And just to clarify, if you're not watching the actual video of this, Richie and I are middle-class white guys. So, so for us to say, it's a little tougher. But yeah, you're right in terms of. I mean, there are a multitude of systemic problems around the world in all sorts of areas that marginalize all sorts of people. But the harsh truth at the end of that is at this moment, and all we have is the moment, and then the moments that will come in the future. In the moment, we get choices: love or fear.
Yeah, that's it, bro. Because, like, yeah,
Those are the two choices.
I am a middle class white guy now, but I didn't grow up like that. I grew up with violence and addiction and mental illness runs through my entire family line. I've had relatives institutionalized for mental illness and all sorts of shit happened when I was a kid. But not in spite of that, even because of that,
Because of it.
I took choices to make sure I didn't fucking turn out like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And heaps of people I find super inspiring, not just here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, but globally, have similar stories and like deeper and more profound stories than that. And I guess that's what I get. I guess if I'm honest, frustrated with. It's like, how do you help people
Help themselves.
help themselves? How do you
Yeah.
help them take ownership of their lives? I'm like, yo, shit is fucked up,
By
but I
getting them
can't
to
do the work for
understand,
you. Yeah.
by
Good.
getting them to understand that nobody's coming to save you.
Yeah, right, right,
Like,
right.
again, like this is some absolute harsh truths. Nobody, nobody is coming to save you. And so what like that can be horrifying and it can be empowering. It can be, I mean, like, because I was in such a victim mentality around my mental illnesses, like I was waiting for the people that had wronged me to apologize to me, to fix me, to make it all better. And it's just not going to happen. No matter how much I get angry about it, frustrated, sad about it, it's not going to happen. And so this is where there's two sides to this. You are completely required to fix yourself, and nobody else can fix you. But you can also ask for help from anyone and everyone. And those people can give you these little nuggets, these little pieces from all over to help put your puzzle back together. But they can't actually do the work for you. They can't put the pieces actually in there. They can just point out that that's a piece that you might need. You have to go get that piece and put it in yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point you raised, bro. I do think that's where a lot of justifiable rage at the system comes from, because people are putting their hand up and they are asking for help and they are going to doctor and they are calling helplines, and the waiting list is fucking months long, or no one picks up the phone, or the treatment's really bad. And that's where I think we can direct our energy, is like not blaming people for what's happened to us or the situations we're in structurally, but hey, look, let's fix this system so that when people do put their hand up, when they do ask for help, when they do need professional support, it's there and it doesn't take 2 months or 3 months or
Yeah,
never
I'm
comes.
lucky because when I finally got around to calling for help, it was back in the day when no one else was calling for help, so nothing was overrun.
Really? Really?
Yeah,
What
yeah,
was growing up difficult for you?
yeah, but in a real different way.
Right.
Um, I had a chat with Paul Wood the other day, a friend of both of ours.
Yeah, he's the man. I was talking to him this morning. Love that dude.
Yeah, and we were talking about comparing traumas, and I mean the crux of that is you can't compare traumas. But so Paul got very angry one day and he killed a guy
Yeah.
with a baseball bat. A lot of context to that. Go look up Paul Wood's story. It's very good. I grew up feeling that I was never successful enough, that I always fell short. And yet I got far, far closer to taking my own life than Paul ever did. And Paul spent 10 years in maximum security prisons. And so when you would like, well, do you want Paul's trauma or Jimmy's trauma? Like everyone would go, Jimmy's trauma. But yet that was the trauma that actually got me. You'd end up being closer to death if that was the trauma you took. And so my upbringing was not traumatic in the. So this is what Paul and I were talking about, was in the evolutionary sense. So our brain is very well developed to be able to deal with severe trauma in the way of like his anger and his imprisonment and things like that. Our brain's designed to deal with that, but the small sort of insidious modern social trauma around not feeling like you're enough, or being bullied in a online sense instead of a physical sense, and having these feelings of inadequacy, like those are not classic Homo sapien problems. And so we have not evolved to be able to deal with them as well as we have, breaking an arm or, getting in a fight.
That's really interesting. That is true, because our maybe I'm proving myself wrong, because from my earlier statements, which is a good thing. I like
Fucking
proving
A.
myself wrong. Because you're right, like our broader social dynamics make us fucking ill. Like we're not
Yeah.
designed to be working so much and designed to be hyper connected digitally. We don't know how to deal with online bullying, like that is such a psychic assault that we
Yeah.
aren't evolved to contend with. And we sit in traffic all day and we eat like calorie dense, nutritionally poor food. That's a really interesting point you raised, bro. Thank you. I
Yeah, well,
appreciate that.
we're basically like one of the simplest things I try to get across to people is you are not broken. You are not broken, but society is. And society is breaking us. We were not designed to live in the way that we're currently living.
Yeah.
World Health Organization says by the year 2025, 80% of people will suffer from a mental health condition in their lifetime. 80. Pretty much everybody will suffer from a mental health condition in their lifetime from now on, really.
Is that globally or in the
That's globally.
OECD? Oh wow.
And so, well, it might have been first world countries, whatever. Doesn't matter. The principle is that we are seeing mental illness rates around the world exponentially rise. And we have done for the last 20 years, and they're not looking like stopping. And it has everything to do with the way that we are living our lives. And if you are going to unconsciously live your life and let society shape you in the way it wants to shape you, then you are going to end up mentally ill.
Yeah, word to that. That's really, really true. It's how do you stop that happening though? Like all our young people are
Through
addicted to social media.
through constant conscious choices. So
Yeah, right.
everything that gets piled onto us is subconscious, unconscious, right?
Yeah.
So, why do women wear so much makeup? Well, because they're forever told they're not pretty enough, and if they buy this thing or that thing, then they'll be prettier, then men will like them more, then they'll have more value in society, blah, blah, bullshit. I much prefer looking at a woman with no makeup than a woman with makeup.
Oh, you're gonna get in trouble, man, because people are gonna come for you and tell you that it's a woman's prerogative to enjoy
Oh,
putting on makeup.
but
And
that's exactly it. It can be their prerogative, but you got to ask the question: where did that prerogative get shaped? And it got shaped by society. And so, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with wearing makeup, but all I'm saying is that when you do not make conscious choices, you will get shaped by the subconscious choices. And so if you would like to, whether it's makeup or the food we eat or the TV we watch or the ads that are on our Instagram, the social media, like you are at the mercy of the algorithm. That's not a conscious choice. You're not consciously choosing what you're seeing on those apps. It is being given to you what manipulates your behavior best for the people that are selling it. And so, if you want to make conscious choices around, we'll talk about social media. So we know that it's bad for us in general. We absolutely know that. Every study has shown that. For me, it's really good. You know why? Because I only follow like 100 people.
intentionally, you only follow 100 people, really? That's
Yeah,
it?
like 100, 150 or something like that.
Right. And why is that?
So I consciously curate the stuff that comes in. It's not just the people, but the pages. So, right, I choose the stuff that I want to see compared to the stuff that will shape me in the way that it wants me to be shaped. And
Yeah,
so,
it's a
but
really good point. Like, that's hard though, man, to like, I totally agree with what you're saying, but it is super hard to filter the noise. Is it hard? Maybe I'm just making up excuses.
you make up excuses, Richard. We talked about this at my birthday a couple of weeks ago. We did. We stood around the bar and we talked about just this.
Yeah, right.
It's about what we allow into it, which is your conscious choices. Because I mean, and there's the very everything is grey.
Yeah, it
There is
is.
no black
It
and
is.
white.
I appreciate you saying that. It is.
Everything is grey. But you've got to watch out that you don't end up in your own confirmation bias bubble. And if you're self-aware, you can understand that. And I choose to look at in particular some right-wing things because I'm really interested in trying to understand their narrative. But I choose how much and when I opt into that.
I appreciate you saying that. I'm doing the same as well. Like, I still believe all the same things I've believed since I was a teenager. I still vote
Is that a
for.
good thing?
Well, I mean, when it comes to like ideals politically, not everything in a literal sense, I suppose I could rephrase that. But by and large, I still want similar social outcomes to occur in our society, you know?
Yeah.
But I've been so disillusioned by the way modern leftist movements have gone and the way that they go about advocacy and the cancel culture, which I always fucking find myself talking about ad nauseum.
Do you know why they
Um,
do that though?
why is that? Well, I was talking
Because
to I was talking to
they're
somebody the other day.
conditioned that way. They're
Yeah,
rewarded
ruled
that
that way.
way.
And also I think we find a narrative that we can put out with that fits with our pain narrative, right? Like it
Yeah.
fits with our inner suffering for some degree, and then we can outsource it all, and then we don't have to, like we've been talking about, take any responsibility or ownership for that pain. It's easier to focus on that. But to the point, I've been reading more conservative thinkers' work, and I actually am a better person for that because I understand my own values and worldview better. And I have humanized people who I used to just not be able to even recognize in my society. And I
Yeah.
think that's a good thing. But I worry that more broadly, we are increasingly othering one another for differences in ideology and worldview.
Yeah.
And that's detrimental for us as individuals. And it's like going to lead to violence
It
in
will lead to it
society.
will lead to violence.
Oh, we're already seeing it in
Yeah.
America, which is obviously doing the stuff we're talking about, but like on crack. But it will
Yeah.
happen here. There
But
will
yeah,
be,
you can track it
yeah,
just along with social media. It's the same axis.
yeah, it is.
We reward. So I mean, you see it all the time in the analytics of the way that let's take for example like the Daily Mail, right? Has just gone further and further into crazy, so that it doesn't even matter if it's right or not. It just gets clicks,
Yeah, that's like everything
right?
though. Even some of the takes, but it's the same with like formerly prestigious publications like the New York Times.
Yeah,
Even just they'll try and like shape the headline to get as much of an emotive response from people.
yeah.
So they'll click it with and then further confirm their bias rather than acting more rationally. And it just further pushes us apart as a society. And I know it really troubles me.
Yeah, well, this perfectly comes back to what we were talking about before in meditation, becoming
Yeah.
the observer of your thoughts and becoming getting that distance between our thoughts and our actions, right? Because what I'm saying here is the world is set up, designed, and rewarding behavior that makes people emotive. And emotions last for, I think, like 90 seconds. I remember reading somewhere recently. Like, it might even be less than that. But an emotion lasts in your body for like 90 seconds. And then everything after that is a choice. If you can continue to feel that way afterwards, then that's a choice. And so, because we are being so emotively triggered constantly in our society, if you do not have the skill to be able to separate the emotion and the reality, then you are going to be taken along for a ride wherever they want to take you.
Yeah, that's really, really, really true. So it's about what about so we've talked about some individual solutions to that, which is developing self-awareness through practices like meditation. I would advocate for sensible substance use and sobriety to help with that journey. Advocate for sleeping more, but
Yeah.
not too much. Just simple lifestyle choices, which are all part and parcel of developing that ability to see yourself reacting. But when you think more systematically, do you think there's an onus on politicians to regulate things like the media and social media? I mean, the two are one and the same really these days.
Yeah.
To do a better job of providing objective truth rather than emotionally driven thought pieces or something like that?
Well, yes and no. And so, yes, I think that because basically our quarterly growth strategy capitalist culture creates demand for the particular behaviors that are happening, the more you the more emotions, this is old school sales, right? If you can create an emotion in a person, you can get a sale. Remember the old World Vision ads? $1 a day and you'll save this person. If you don't give us $1, they're going to die.
Yeah.
You're like, oh shit, that worked so well. We're always looking to emote people to be able to sell to them. And so, with the way that our capitalist culture is, then yeah, that's the prevailing narrative that's going to come through. So, do we need governmental oversight in order to stop that? Yes, in a lot of ways. But we've also got, 96%, Tasha said? Yeah, 96% of our politicians aren't fucking self-aware. So do I want them legislating that? No, I do not. And so there's this weird, strange balance to find that. And like, how do you change a culture? Well, through story. And so when I talk about a mental fitness continuum, I ask, hey, Richie, where are you on the mental fitness continuum? Mine runs from 0 to 100. It's got different emotions at different segments. And let's say Richie's at 80. I'm like, cool. Let's say you're at 80. Then you're like, well, 80 on mine is very good. I'd say I'm at 80 and I think I'm really good. Getting above 80 is tough. And then you're like, okay, well, what is my family's mental fitness? And so you take you, Claire, and Jack and average that. And let's say it averages out at 70. You're like, okay, cool. And then you're like, okay, what's Gray Lynn's mental fitness? And then you average out everyone's and you're like, whoa, okay.
I don't even know, yeah.
That's at 50. And then you go, okay, well, what's New Zealand's? And you're like, well, that's at 35. And you're like, oh, shit. And so how do you move an entire country from 35 to 50? Well, you do that by moving individuals from 35 to 50. You
really
move,
yeah. That's
you
great.
move the average by moving individuals. You can't just move a country's average. It's impossible. It doesn't mathematically work. You have to move a whole bunch of individuals up, and then the average gets better.
Yeah, right.
And so
it's like building Lego one piece at a time, right?
Yeah. And so we ask the questions from a broader perspective. What is fucking up the mental fitness of this country? And there are many answers to that. And then you're like, okay, can we legislate against some of the things in some ways to be able to stop it fucking people up so much? And so we do that all around the world in regards to alcohol, drugs, and wearing a seatbelt, all sorts of things. We legislate in that regard. And then we go, okay, well, if that's going to stop some people from getting as fucked up, well, what can we do to actually help people? And then legislate in some ways to go, right, well, we need to encourage people to work less and have better family time. Okay, well, how do we do that on a national level? Okay, we can start incentivizing businesses to be looking at 4-day work weeks. Okay, cool. We can, and there's all sorts of political things we can do in all sorts of different ways, but we have to start legislating in little ways, not coming along and saying, I have the answer, this is going to fix everything. And this goes back to what we were talking about at the start, is that I have never seen two people move themselves from the bottom of the continuum in the same way. And so going, we just need to do this and that'll help our population is ineffective at best.
Yeah, it makes makes for a good soundbite, but for very little to none when
Yeah.
it comes to tangible change.
Yeah, because then we
Speaking,
look at the bottom of the cliff stuff, right?
yeah, that
We
it,
need to fund the hotlines and everything more. Yes, absolutely, that's great. It doesn't fix your fucking problem.
yeah, that ties into what I was kind of touching on with you earlier when it comes to the explosion of people who are talking about mental health in the digital space, which is brilliant. And anyone listening or watching this, I'm not trying to discredit that, but I think we're far past the point of raising awareness. Like you said, there's
Oh,
almost too
yeah,
much awareness. In fact, I read an article recently that argued, it comes out of a new book coming out in the UK, that a lot of our normal emotions are now being medicalized unnecessarily.
yeah.
And
Welcome to
that,
the DSM, the Diagnostic Standards Manual,
yeah.
which is basically every emotion gets labeled with a thing, and then there's a corresponding drug
Well,
for it. It's been happening for 20 years.
well, the amount of people I see who are saying that they've got trauma or they've got PTSD or they're suffering from anxiety or they're depressed when actually maybe they're just having a bad day and they're a bit sad or they don't like
Yep,
their job or they're
yep.
experiencing a normal grief because they've gone through a breakup or someone died or, you know, I think that's a, I think that's a real problem, you know, when we're constantly having to put complex labels on things that are actually a normal part of the human experience. We're making ourselves more fragile as a culture.
Yeah, and those labels, they actually help form identity.
Yeah,
And I
bro.
and identity can be very, very hard to move out of. So identity can be really, really, really good. You say, I'm a Muay Thai practitioner. And you're like, cool. And so if you would like to keep that identity, you need to keep training. You need to keep turning up to the gym. You need to keep learning about it. And these are all very, very good things alongside that identity, which is, if I'm a runner, I have to keep running, or else I'm not actually a runner. But that's an identity I want. When you label particular things, and again, this is all very grey because for what I have found to be a small percent of people, having a label on it has allowed them to understand their behavior a lot better and then be able to change it because of it. But what you're talking about here is this great big sort of tsunami of people coming in and labeling themselves or being labeled very quickly by GPs and other practitioners. And then you become that diagnosis. And this is a pretty new age comment I'm about to say, but I really, really like it, which is I am are the two most powerful words in the universe, for what you say after those creates your reality. When you say I am depressed, you are fucking depressed. If you even change that to simply I am currently suffering from depression, that is a big energetic shift in the way that you identify with that behavior. It is not something you are, it is something you are currently experiencing. And so when you say I am, then you fucking are. And it's very hard to not become that. I'm depressed, I'm depressed, I'm depressed, I'm depressed. Yes, you are depressed.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. This echoes from a few conversations I've been having lately, which is reassuring to me because I feel like when lots of people who don't know each other are saying similar things, that it lets me have some hope that maybe we're going to be part of a shift away from identifying with the terrible shit that's happened to us. Because when that is our identity, there's no impetus to change
Yeah.
because
So there's
that's who
nothing
we are.
wrong. There's nothing wrong with suffering from depression. I suffered from depression.
I've
Lots
suffered
of
from
people do.
depression,
You
yeah,
have. There is absolutely nothing wrong with suffering from depression.
but it's not
What
who
you
you
just want to
are.
be what you want to be careful of is taking that as your identity. Because when you take that as your identity, it's very hard to move out of that identity.
I'm just looking at my t-shirt, which is like a tropical day with a noose on it from like a very great band that I like, Trophy Eyes. But there was a period where I accessorized my poor mental health. If I think about it objectively, retrospectively, do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Even with the tattoos that I have, so many of them come from this unself-aware space when I was younger about how I was feeling and where that came from, which is kind of interesting. I didn't realize it until a therapist pointed it out to me once. She's like, look at that picture on your arm. What is that telling? What is the narrative that you've embedded in yourself, right? And I think more and more, I worry that young people are doing exactly that. They're embedding a moment in time in a difficult situation into their sense of who they are. And that keeps them in that stuck, hurt, dark place. And yeah, I really want to be part of trying to help shift that and help young people, come to that consciousness that you've been talking about this afternoon.
Yeah, and this is good to understand the difference between mental illnesses. And we sort of just think mental illness and we just think one big group of mental illnesses. 7% of mental illnesses are neurodiverse. So those are schizophrenia, bipolar, OCD, things like that. Those things are an actual neurological difference that creates a certain set of behaviors. And those require a bunch of different ways to be able to manage. 93% of all mental illnesses and climbing are what they call lifestyle-based mood disorders. Those are your stress, anxiety, depression, things like that. And the most wonderful, uplifting, and beautiful thing that you know about these disorders is that you're not born with them, you don't catch them, and they're not forever. You currently have them because of a set of circumstances. And you can then not have them because of a different set of circumstances. And so you are completely able to change your reality in regards to those things. And you can still do the same with the neurodiverse as well. But this big, giant part of it, you are not those disorders. You are currently experiencing them for a period of time. The period of time is up to you. Mine was far, far, far too long because I was the classic dick about it and not telling anybody, trying to harden up and trying to sort it out myself.
Until you're
Yeah.
crying about your lunch choices.
Yeah. And I mean, I'd broken down a bunch of times before that and a bunch of times after that, but that one particular breakdown happened to be the first piece of self-awareness for me.
When that happened, what happened after that? What was your pathway to recovery?
Bro, I can tell you exactly what it was. I
Wow, I'm
went
asking.
home.
Yeah.
I went home that day,
Yeah.
and I said to my wife, "I'm not well." I said, "There's something like I think I'm depressed," and she's like, no shit." She did it in a nice way, but like that was the feeling about it. Fucking thank God you finally actually come to that realization. And she said, "Well, you need to do something about it." And I said, "Okay." And so I did what most people do when they have a problem that they need to solve, and I Googled it. And I said, "I've got depression, what do I do?" And the first thing that came up back in those days was really the only thing that came up, which was the National Depression Initiative's website that had John Kerwin as the face of it. And so I went on there and I started reading what they had to say, and like I didn't really comprehend a lot of it, I didn't care about a lot of it, but I took two things off that website. And one was it said you should get fit. Getting physically fit is good for your mental health. I thought, okay. And then the other one said you should have a goal and something to work towards. And I was like, okay. And so I closed my laptop and my wife went, "What did you learn?" And I said, "Well, these are two things I learned from there." She said, "Well, what are you going to do about that?" And so because I'm an inherently lazy person, I took the goal and I took the fitness and I smashed them together. And I said, "I'm going to have a goal to get fit. And she was like, okay, well, what are you going to do? And I looked over in the corner of my room and there was an $8 lilo from the warehouse. And I said to her, I am going to paddle that lilo down the longest river in New Zealand. I am going to lilo the Waikato. And she's like, sure, okay, go ahead. And the rest is history. That was literally the first day. The day I decided that I had a problem and I needed to get better was the day I decided that I was going to lilo the Waikato. Now, did getting fit and having a goal change my life? Fix me? No, not in the slightest. But it did change my life in regards to it started me on the journey to look for solutions to opt into my own healing and growth.
How do you think people like yourself and myself and Zane from all the brothers and all the other different voices that are online talking about mental health and mental fitness and mental illness and recovery, how do you think we could work more cohesively together? Or do you think it's good as it is, where we all have our own different
It's
pockets?
good as it is.
Right.
It's good as it is because, like, do you know your analytics, Richie? Do you know your male female breakdown of how many people follow you?
Yeah, roughly.
What is it?
It's something like 58% female, 42% male,
Yeah.
and the average age is like 24-year-olds to 30-year-olds or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Mine's 70% woman, 30% men, 35 to 60.
Oh, 35 to 60, older.
Correct.
Right. Yeah, right. I'm like just a little bit under that.
Like
Yeah.
30 to 60, I think. 30 to
Yeah.
55, something around that. But older. Much older than yours. And so you and I, let's just say you and I were, we had the same brain, but we do what we do in our different lives. What we need to be doing is saying the same thing, and we talk to different people.
Yeah, bro, hard. Yeah. And just this
Real
same
simple.
outcome, different language, right?
Correct. Because, like, you could put me, you, Paul, Mike King, you could put us all on a stage, one after another, and at the end, they'd survey the audience, and a quarter of them would go, fuck, Richie, best speaker there. Quarter of them would be like, Jimi Hunt, best speaker there. Quarter would be Mike, quarter would be Paul, and we'd all just hit them differently in different ways. And one of the things that you learn from advertising is that in order to sell a product, the person needs to see it about 8 times. They need to see that ad. They need to be told by a friend. They need to see it in the shop about 8 times before they make the purchase. And the same is true for how we create change. Quite often, it's the 8th person that says it that you're like, oh shit, I get it. And they might credit Richie Hardcore with changing their life, but there were actually 7 other people before him that had laid the seed and explained it. He was just the one that explained it, that got it across to that person at that time. And we need as many people telling as many stories as possible in as many different ways as possible, because you look at the other side of the coin, they're advertising to you 24/7 for the way they want it.
So maybe
so we need to be responding back the other way.
So maybe some of the critique of there's so many voices here, maybe it's not the number, it's just ensuring that everyone's saying like, not even saying like evidence-based things. Because you pointed out earlier in the conversation, there's some bullshit out there, which is bad advice.
Yeah, or like I said earlier, is anyone saying that they have the answer?
No.
They don't have the answer. They have an answer that helped them. And a lot of them don't even have an answer that help them. A lot of them, there's a bunch of people out there talking about meditation that don't fucking meditate.
Yeah, right.
You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
Um,
I always hate seeing like fucking fitness influencers or whatever. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't have a problem with influencers at all. But I'm like, I know you do a lot of fucking cocaine and booze, and like,
yeah,
and you're advocating for like some new green smoothie or some shit.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's only when, I mean, like, COVID's the easiest one to sort of see this sort of stuff.
Oh
Is
yeah,
like
it's
you've got
nuts.
all these people, these influencers and everything, recommending ivermectin right now, and you know it's an anti-parasite. And here's the thing: they have tested it, and from what I have seen from the actual studies, that they tried it and it worked, but it worked only in this particular way with this particular thing, which is not actually available to be able to do. If you gave it in enough dosage as would be needed to kill the virus, it would actually just rot your gut through as well. So you're like, this is where people cherry pick the things and go, hey, a study said that it worked. And they're like, yeah, it said that it worked. It killed the virus, but it also ate your stomach. You're like, come on, people. You can't just cherry pick the stuff and say this is the answer for it.
Yeah, it's hard with the whole COVID thing because everything's become political. Like I
Yeah.
mean, I used to listen to a song called Everything's Political. It was like a cool hip hop song, right? When I was in like my 20s and at uni and like I don't know, coming to political consciousness and doing a degree in politics. But now it's like everything is political. Like it's the fucking air we breathe. And debates become irrational because like we've been, I guess it intersects with our conversation. Everything's got this
Feelings.
emotional
Yeah.
bias to it. And it's really hard for some people to like I posted a meme today actually. It's like you know the left wing, right wing, you know the two arms handshaking meme. Are you
Yep.
familiar with that one? Like they're doing like a bro shake, and it says left wing, right wing, people who take drugs designed for horses, and on the right wing it was ivermectin, and on the left wing it was ketamine,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
and it's so hard for people to step outside of their tribe or their camp or their fucking political team and look at what the objective data says, which is it really troubles me. Even because I've seen like even academia, like I've put so much weight in academia now, but academia now has become this political
Academia is
battleground.
corrupted as fuck,
Yo,
bro.
it's so hard to find
Yeah.
non-ideologically biased academics,
Yeah.
and
They
I'm
follow the
reading
money.
like Carol Hooven's book on testosterone. And I'm someone who's always looked at things through, I'm just going to show up, I'm just hold up books just to like prove my point. I've
Look how
always
smart
looked,
I am.
no, it's not even that, but I've always looked at things through like a sociological lens when it comes to gender and gender roles, right? Like
Yeah.
gender and power and masculinities. And
I
I'm
feel bad
reading
now. I've only got one book anywhere near me. It's like
well, I'm in my study, and it's your book. Your book's in my bedroom.
that's the only one I read. It's the
Yeah.
only one I read.
Well, it's good. You got to back yourself. But reading Hooven, who's a professor at Harvard, one of the world's
Yeah.
most prestigious, says that she's worried to publish her research because ideologically it goes against a lot of the common narratives now. But it's just fucking science. And
Yeah.
it really bothers me because when we can't have faith in our most prestigious institutions to put out science for fear that they'll be cancelled or they'll lose their jobs and stuff, like how are we going to make like well-informed decisions?
Oh yeah. No, it's all right. We'll turn into the documentary Idiocracy.
Oh bro, that's such a great film. I love that you bring that up. Yeah, but do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
people seem to put far too much weight in individual experience and standpoint now. And I actually can't blame them when we can't really trust. Well, we can trust, don't get me wrong. I do believe that it's not so far gone that political institutions and academic institutions are just putting out bullshit. but it is become increasingly difficult to discern what is an objective truth and set of reality and what is like an ideologically influenced body of work that's presented as academia. There's no question in that. I'm just like fucking. I'm just like ranting.
No, but here's the thing. I'll sum this up because we've gone too long anyway, Richard. You've gone over your own prescribed time limit.
Sorry.
But basically, like, you're right there. The whole academic world and the political world is in turmoil. And so one of the things that's very hard for us to control is systems and society. We can't control it. The only thing we've got agency over is ourselves. And so what this does is it brings us back to us. And we need to be able to consciously separate our thoughts and our emotions and be able to observe them and be able to make self-aware decisions based on those things. When you get to that space and then you share that with the people close to you and the things that you've learned and they look at you and you're like, wow, Richie's so much better now than he was. Jimmy is so much better now than he was. What have you been doing? Well, what I've done is I've tried all of these things. Now, this didn't work for me, but it might work for you. These things didn't work for me. And all I can tell you is from my experience, these things made me a better human. And then that butterfly effects out to your family, your friends, your suburb, your city, your country. And that's the only way we can create systemic change is through making individual change. Some real smart old guy said that in a much simpler way, which was be the change you want to see in the world.
You just summed that up beautifully. You brought this to a wonderful end, a glorious climax, Jimmy. Thank you. Jimmy,
you're more than welcome.
Where can people find you if they want to look you up, bro?
JimiHunt.com, JIMI Hunt.com. Feel free to get in touch, send me an email, hit me up on Instagram. As you can see by our long chat, I like to chat, so I'm happy to chat with you. And if there's no one else out there that will help you, I will. So please, if you need anything, say hi.
I really appreciate your time, bro. Thank you for being on the show. You're awesome. Talk to you soon.
You are too. Cheers.